Hey y'all, what's up? So as you know, Season 8 of Death Battle ended, and well, I promised everyone that I would make a ranking of all the episodes. But we're going to structure this video a little differently. We're going to do a more of a tier list style video where they're all going to be put in their own separate tiers. Until we hit the top 5, where that's where we're going to start ranking them. And right before I get into this, I'm not going to try to predict Season 9's opponents just yet. That's going to be a later video. But for now, let's see what Season 8 has for us. Now, these are the episodes that I don't like, and surprisingly enough, there's only 4, which is a cool number. And these are not going to be particularly ordered, I just kind of consider them the same. But, to move on, first one on the chopping block is going to be Akuma versus Shao Kahn. Let's start off with the good, because I don't like being a negative Nancy. I do think that Akuma's analysis is actually really good, and given NetherRealm, they did their best with Shao Kahn. And hell, Shao Kahn got a better cutaway than Akuma, which that has to count for something. But overall, the analysis were fine. They weren't bad per se, but the animation, not very good. I like to weight an episode based on its fight, if anything, and well, let's just say Akuma vs Shao Kahn, not a very good episode. Let's get the good things out the way. There is 2 lines that I like, and 1 good shot, and 1 brief scuffle, and that is it. Everything else is not good. Let's start off with the obvious thing, voice acting. Akuma sounds really good. Kinda expect a little bit more gruff in his voice, but that's a very, very small nitpick. However, Shao Kahn though, let's just say he does not sound that good. Like, it's missing a lot. He just sounds like a more drunk Raiden, which I'm not a big fan of. It doesn't give out his threatening aura, or his sheer dominance nearly as well. Because the writing is good, but let's be honest, big problem is the animation itself. SFM, when animating literally anything besides a hand-to-hand fight, are amazing. Animating hand-to-hand fights, they are not that good. And it's pretty well demonstrated here. The problem is that it looks janky as heck. And this led to a bunch of ironically good scenes. And I know this isn't really an issue, but there's this one scene where it shows the impact where there's a black screen beforehand, and it's only on the 1 hit, nothing else. I just wanted to pick on that one scene, I'm sorry. And speaking of picking on something, the sound design, it is good. It is mostly pretty good. The hammer sounds great, and the actual projectile sound good, but everything else is kind of mediocre. Oh, and speaking of the fight, for most of the fight, Akuma's trying his hardest while Shao Kahn is just soloing him. Which, yes, I know, like, debate-wise, yes, it'd make more sense. But come on. Later we are going to discuss fights that are stomps in a versus sense, but in animation are not that. Because who wants to watch a fight where one guy dominates the entire time without breaking a sweat while the other guy is trying his hardest? And like, the only time where Akuma like even damages Kahn is when one, he has that giant hole in his chest, and when he does the Raging Demon, which, mind you, is the Oni version. That's another thing that's not good. Shin Akuma. It didn't really help the fight at all. It could have been literally Akuma, would have been the exact same. It's a little combo move that Akuma does. Pretty cool, and it leads to Shao Kahn's X-Ray move, which pretty cool. And also leads to the Oni transformation, which is pretty good for the most part. But then when Oni starts chucking fireballs, it looks hideous. Looks like it's just a bunch of PNGs flying. Which, that's another issue with the fight, that sometimes it just looks like PNGs just being slotted into the fight. The early Go Hadouken had this nice effect and sound design and everything. The Go Hadouken here now just seems pretty weak. And it is somehow worse than M. Bison versus Shao Kahn. In that fight, when he does his little bubble, the momentum of each projectile kept on getting more and more. And it also turned the projectile into Shao Kahn's little arrow thingies. But here, it's literally the same thing. No effect, nothing else. And I am not a fan of the death. It happens off screen, has barely any wind up, barely any impact, and that's it. I will say though, him having that giant hole in his chest and the last line do not bug me as much as other people. I do think it's in character for him to say that.
Flawless victory!
And the impulse analysis was fine. You couldn't really make a strong argument for Akuma at all. How Shao Kahn could literally just resist the Raging Demon. And one last thing that's kind of funny, I was not expecting them to just throw the Mike Hagar feat. That was completely out of nowhere. Or that's more of ironic value, if anything. Now, this is my 3rd time recording this section, so I'm going to keep the Ryuko versus Shadow section very brief. I don't like it for a multitude of reasons. The big reason is that the way they treated Ryuko. They made her a complete asshole, but despite the fact that she has both her scissor blades, you know, the thing that shows that she's at the end of her arc. The fight is just very boring all around. The track is a giant disappointment, and the analysis don't help it out. And also, the facial animation not that good. At this point, I genuinely don't care about rewatching this episode. I just kind of want to do this thing and move on. Now I can actually talk about something that I don't really like as well. Blake versus Mikasa is the next one on the chopping block. And in all honesty, this episode is what I like to call mid. It does not have anything good. The frame rate is very slow. It has not really good line delivery. Like, I'm just gonna play this one funny meme line.
Are those 2 sets of ears? She must have 4 times the hearing.
Voice acting is fine for the most part, but some of the writing is just not good. It's the complete opposite problem from Akuma vs. Shao Kahn, where that one had good writing but bad voice acting. This has good voice acting but bad writing. Besides that, there really isn't much to write about this episode that's actually good. This cool shot right here where Mikasa cuts Blake's arm off, that's pretty cool. Okay, so editing me in the future, I was going back in like editing this thing, and then I realized while editing the Blake vs. Mikasa section, I realized that in the part where the cool shot happens, it's like it's a PNG, and they just pop out of frame for this tiny frame. I don't know why. I think this literally could have been fixed if they just slightly extended it by 1 goddamn frame. So it's not a critique that I want to make. It's just such a minor nitpick, but it's just something kind of funny I stumbled across. However, I'd be doing a disservice to Death Battle if I didn't mention the track. The Thunder Shroud, one of the best of the season, not even joking. It's not like an Elder God tier track, but honestly, it's really, really good. It is most definitely a top 3 contender. And honestly, the frame rate really kills this fight. And this entire episode is just a snores fest. But honestly, at least it has some really good elements about it that puts it above the rest. We're gonna move on to the next tier now, shall we? Hopefully, I actually have really good things to say, which I will. Now, this is the tier I like to call the sleep tier. Not because they're bad, it's just that they're kind of boring. And that's why this is probably the shortest section, because I really don't have anything to add or even criticize. It's average. So I'm going to save you some time and save myself some time by just quickly speedrunning through most of these episodes. Lex vs. Doom. It has a cool analysis, really good editing. The fight can be good at some points. The foot dive spam was really cool. Doom sounds a little off, and in the fight, nothing really surprising happens. It's just like boring. Not a bad episode, just very, very boring. Not something I'm going to go back on. Korra vs. Storm. Only thing memorable was this shot and the track. Everything else was just very sleepy. And most of the stuff that I said from the last one applies here. So good editing. Voice acting is actually pretty good this time around. And another thing, Nemesis Bloodwork is in this video. So like, I have to give it this spot just for that. And in all honesty, this video is actually pretty high in my opinion, just because they could have done a lot worse. But regardless, it was a good episode. Now finally, to round things off, we got the most disappointing episode. Star vs. Steven. The flow in Steven's analysis is not good, and I do not like it. But Star's analysis is pretty good. My problem with it is that it just lacks this one something. I don't know what it is. Also, they're missing a wee bit. Like, they bring up Kaiju Steven, but they don't use them. And plus, yes, I know that it got the sprite treatment so it can do more, but in a perfect world, we would have gotten it hand-drawn. In all honesty, this episode is pretty mid. The track is good, but that's kind of a given. And now, finally, the last one. This was the actual one. Macho Man versus Kool-Aid Man. This was a very, very different episode. It did a lot of different things structure-wise. It was the first fully animated death battle, not just fight animation, but like everything else. It was the first one that was animated in its entirety. Another thing, it tells a story. Not a good one, but it's the one that's still there. And that's somewhat commemorable. I think Raptor said it best. This one's ranked pretty weird because it's not at all like the previous ones. So I feel like just structure-wise, since it did something very different, I might just give it this tier alone. And it does do some cool stuff, like a stop motion bit, awesome. The track's also pretty cool, but that's about it. Finding Boomstick's dad is not cool, and Deadpool showing up was kind of cringe. Also, I do think they handled Macho Man's death pretty well. But aside from that, we got this tier right out the way, and I'm happy. Now I can actually talk about shit that I actually like. Now we're at the tier where I can actually start talking about the positive stuff. And it was only occupied by one episode. Well, that's kind of surprising. And you might just say, oh, why not just move it one tier above? Because I don't like this episode nearly as much as the other ones. Like, this is going to be the episode that's going to be like the divider between the bad tier and the great tier. And right here, we got Batman versus Iron Man. Now, to start off, I really like both of these guys' analysis. I do think, in comparison, Batman definitely gets the best analysis he's ever gotten. Meanwhile, Iron Man is a lot more worse than when he got his first analysis. It's mostly just going to come down to how much I absolutely loved that episode, though. So, I'm not going to knock it too much. And they did a good job of explaining what abilities they're going to use. Like, I love how they go out of their way to explain just how powerful the Hellbat is. I will say, though, they did bring up the final bat suit. However, they just completely disregard it in the animation. Which is kind of cringe, because I'm pretty sure they could have came up with a reason to not use it. But for the most part, it's pretty good. It's nice all around. Also, them gushing about the final bat suit's pretty cool. But anyways, the fight. Now, someone made this meme of the start of it. It's very much similar to Lex vs. Doom, which that's unintentional, but it's fine. I do like the start though, but let's start off with the obvious. The voice acting. It's pretty good. Both sound really in character, especially Iron Man. Like, he gets across his cocky side very well. Oh yeah, and that's another thing this fight does pretty well is small character details. Like Batman setting up the explosion for later in the fight, him going into the dark to get the Hellbat suit, and during the fight it shows Tony's hacking his suit. All really cool moments that establish character. Oh yeah, and speaking of the Hellbat suit, I absolutely love the reveal of it. The shot composition of it beforehand, and Bruce's line all add up to a hype moment.
Ready when you are.
The shot after is a little confusing, like, morally wise, but it's cool. Him literally chucking Tony outside the ship, and then in a raw display of power, just smashes Tony up with his ship. And it's something that I like to call really, really cool. And then afterwards, it gets pretty good. And Tony's line when he shows up in the Godbuster is pretty cool.
I've got a suit for everything, Bats, including busting wannabe gods like you.
And Bruce sending out the bats to throw off the Iron Man suit's sensors, so they just start wildly attacking while he cleaves them all off one by one, is again another really cool detail. And it also shows off his kind of intelligence. And then it follows up for one of the coolest lines in the season, which is this.
Bust this.
That's also one of the coolest hand-drawn bits of the whole show. And again, displaying the pure power between the Hellbat suit. In the beam fight, he lasered Tony so hard he went through several buildings. In this shot right here of the bat symbol just getting reversed outward is really good. Then it kind of sets up for the star, which I does get into my critique of. They said something like it's like planet level when it's only at like 1%. And it barely put a dent in this city. It's just one of those things where the thing they said is a lot different from what we've got. And then it leads to the cool little thing known as the final bout, aka the death. And I do like this part when Bruce and Tony go hand to hand, which Bruce kind of fucks up Tony, which again shows his martial art abilities. But it then leads to the death, which doesn't make sense to me. They said in the analysis that Bruce was just able to do some of the most bullshit and thinking ever. So Tony putting the suit in him and the ship would have kind of threw me off. But it is pretty nice in concept. The suit basically blowing up Batman from the outside. Really cool. And the last Tony line is one of the most Iron Man / Tony Stark lines ever, which is cool. It's not nearly as good as, you know, the last couple of lines from Iron Man vs. Lex, but then again, that's Iron Man vs. Lex, so I kind of hold that to a much different standard. And again, post-analysis, really cool. I'm still a little mad that they didn't mention the final Batsuit at all when it's like Batman's strongest suit. I'm pretty sure the reason they didn't is because they didn't have the budget to do it. Also, before I go, the track. I do think the lyrics are kind of a lot more tailored to Iron Man, but I think it's a fine track. I don't think it's anything too bad. So yeah. And now let's move on to episodes that I actually can talk about for a little bit longer. To start us off, let's go with a personal favorite, Link vs. Cloud 2. Now, to start, the editing in this episode, really good, but that's just a given, and also like the analysis, it's also really cool. Goes into the characters pretty well, yada, really good. I'm not going to try to say the same thing over and over for an analysis, alright? So I'm just going to keep it short and simple with it. However, the fight, though, really, really good. It's an extremely dynamic fight. First, it starts off with a motorcycle chase, then it starts out with a simple little sword duel, and then it's a 4v1, and then it's a big man versus a small guy. It's really cool and really good. And it nicely flows between one event to another. And speaking of which, they managed to sell a lot of the hits in the fight. In the animation, it's subtly shown that every time when Cloud throws his sword out, it really does have it has a lot of follow through, which is very good. But let's start off with the beginning because I got a little off track. Motorcycle fight is really creative, and I do like how they show off Cloud's stats at first to show that he's fueled up, but towards the end he's running out of energy. Really, really good. However, before we get into more positives, I do want to bring up one thing. There are these very noticeable times where the shading just goes crazy for like a second, and it bugs me to no end. But it really becomes an issue towards the end. I do kind of hate how they have Cloud's other sword just right here conveniently. It's asking for a lot of suspension of disbelief. It could have just shown that it was in the motorcycle. It wasn't that hard. But back onto the positives, I love this little character moment where he's just breaking the vases and showing off Cloud's kind of lighter side. He's genuinely confused, and when Link tries to throw one at him, he catches it and carefully places it down. Very good attention to detail. I also do like when they just time stop each other. Really cute little moment. And again, to demonstrate Cloud's speed advantage, you see him very easily just dodge a lot of Link's attacks, while Link a little bit more defensively uses his shield a lot. Then this sets up for the really cool moment where he breaks out the 4 swords, and this really demonstrates his very crafty nature. Meanwhile, this shows off Cloud's more better swordsmanship, him breaking out 2 swords and going ham. And again, the little character detail of them really loving their own little thing they do. Like the purple one really likes annoying people, the red one really likes his bombs, and the blue one pulls a drink in his face. It's a nice way of demonstrating each of their different personalities. And that does add something to the fight, which is the amount of abilities they use. This does not feel like they're not missing out on anything. And I think you could just tell by the way I'm describing it all. But after the cool little sword section, and then Cloud says, "Ha, funny black hole go burr," and then pulls a Mega Man Battle Royale. This also pulls a cool moment where Link grabs his sword, and in the track there is a very noticeable tone shift, and the dynamic around them also changes. Like, it gets a lot darker, and it plays the classic ocarina tune, which sets the scene for the final showdown. Starting off with the transformation of Link, it is done super well. The little line before it followed with the amazing transformation with Big Link just sitting there menacingly in the flames. Then we have the cool shot of Cloud dodging the rock. And I kind of wish the fight between Cloud and Big Link was a little longer, but that's just personal preference. And speaking of, it does have the problem of the bigger form gets bodied harder than the person in base. But that's an issue I don't think we can ever get around. And we get to the death, which is really good. The emphasis on the swords in the air, coupled with Cloud's line in the UI showing that he has used up all of his energy, then we get this nice moment of Cloud going for Omni Slash. And then we get the patented Season 8 shot of Cloud sitting menacing on the moon. And when Link tries to defend himself, in a raw display of power, Cloud just cuts through that, and we get this meaty cut. And then we get the patented 999 from Final Fantasy VII. So yeah, episode kind of cool, and the post-analysis also pretty cool. Yoda versus King Mickey. It is good for literally every reason everyone said it. Good fight, good track, good analysis, good everything. And the fact that they were using a character like Yoda, and they didn't do any dead memes. And it was a really, really great way of starting off the season. But moving on. But next one up, we got Poe vs. Iron Fist. This is a really, really good episode, surprisingly. We're gonna start with the analysis because they're both good. Nothing to write home about, and nothing to really highlight because they're just really good. Them talking about Poe at all is enough to make it really good. The fact they go very deep into his character is also really cool. And I personally have a very fond connection to Poe. And Iron Fist is also really cool. And speaking of things that are really cool, the fight. Let us start with the voice acting, because both sound really good. The thing I love about this fight is the banter between the two. They could have very easily made Iron Fist sound like a complete dickhead, but they managed to make him sound very respectful to Poe. And again, Poe, really well done. I absolutely adore the little stairs bit in the middle, and it's a nice little homage to Kung Fu Panda 1. And again, this little bamboo fight sounds straight out of something from Kung Fu Panda. It also shows that both are pretty crafty in their ways. And that is something I absolutely love about this fight. The choreography between the two are really, really good. Like, for example, when they're doing the bamboo fight, they demonstrate that since Poe's a panda, he's gonna eat the fuck out of the bamboo stick. But this isn't gonna let Iron Fist throw off his guard, so then he knees him in the chin. Really well done. I also absolutely love how they did the whooshy finger hold. Again, to demonstrate Poe's crafty nature, he takes a bamboo stick and makes Iron Fist sneeze, which is very creative. And I absolutely love just his delivery of the huh. Like, he just looks genuinely confused. They use this moment to demonstrate Iron Fist's speed by him breaking out the whooshy finger hold. Then Poe says haha Lamau and just brings him into the golden verse because why not? But that really just describes the fight. Pure gold. Like, I can keep babbling on about everything in this fight. However, I do want to highlight two things. Iron Fist 1-inch punch that has a lot of impact and buildup, and two, really, really good dragon fight. Especially since it was hand-drawn, it looked very good. But then it did lead to the death, which is really just a disintegration death, which Mimi no like. And then it followed up with Poe being happy about how he killed someone, which also don't like. But in the grand scheme of things, this episode is really, really good. And how did I mention to forget the track? It's one of the best in the show. It is very heavily Kung Fu Panda themed, which is cool, because I like those movies a lot. However, moving on. Now we've hit the video where I'm going to be talking a long time about these episodes, and where they are properly ranked. All the other tiers were like, they were semi-ordered, but this one is pretty definitive. So starting at the bottom, kinda, we got Heihachi versus Geese. Now yes, I know that this might be a little controversial, but I'm going to be upfront. Most of my reasoning I like this episode is because one, I love both characters, and two, it strikes a very personal chord with me. I'll apply what I think for every other analysis that is good, and apply it here. Good characters that I like, interesting jokes, even though the Elon Musk joke is bad, not good, everything else is pretty cool. However, the fight, I'm gonna get this out of the way, the track is amazing. Kings of Iron is literally a KOF track in the Tekken style, and I love it. I love Geese Howard's theme, I love Tekken, mashed together, really good track. But besides that, everything else is also really good. Like, every time when I get to that one part in Kings of Iron, I can see that one rotating shot, and it is beautiful. But we'll get to that eventually. But first things first, the voice acting. The intentionally bad Geese voice and Heihachi's pure Japanese are amazing and definitely fit in character. And also the setup's also really good. Them fighting on its volcano for the rights to their company, that sounds like something straight out of a KOF and Tekken crossover. And fight animation wise is also pretty good. Even though there are a couple shots that make them look stiff, it's fine for the most part. They managed to get across Heihachi's pure strength. And they also managed to show off Geese Howard's not only playstyle, but by him being a massive prick, while Heihachi's a more calm and reserved. They managed to make the predictable line like actually funny. They didn't make it annoying, they made it actually good. Because later, Heihachi uses it when he turns the tables. It's kind of cathartic. And the entire ending half of the fight is really well done. The sound design gets cranked up to 12, and it uses the Street Fighter Third Strike parry sound effect. And I love how Heihachi finally, after the first half, he learns and decides to take a more defensive approach. The roles get essentially reversed. It's a nice bit of choreography. And then we get this fantastic rotating shot between the two. We see the volcano about to blow up, and more of their heads start getting more and more emphasis, and it all leads to this moment where they finally take a breather. And it's a nice bit of just to let the action sink in and breathe. And to demonstrate the stats between the two, Heihachi just tanks Geese's hit while Geese gets ragdolled into the volcano. Which I kind of do wish they had a fight on the volcano, but Heihachi spiking Geese down to a lava spike, that is pretty good. It sets up for this horrifying Geese melting by lava. It's like, ugh. We see Heihachi crawl out of the volcano and just punch the camera. Perfect. They managed to make some good arguments for Heihachi winning. But that does retroactively mean that Jin versus Ryu kinda is debunked now. But different topic, different day. However, moving on. Now the next one up is going to be Madara versus Aizen. Again, analysis good, not going to say anything else about it. However, the fight's a little different. The start is actually not that good in my opinion. The rigs they use are very stiff. And Aizen's model looks weirdly pink. And when they move, they're either very crisp and slick, they're very stiff. Like when Madara is jumping in the air with the Susanoo arm, he isn't even moving. However, everything after that preview is really good. Like after Aizen no-sells the arm, we get this clean animation of Aizen cutting up Madara and flicking off some blood from his coat. It all just is so smooth. But then we get the SpongeBob face from Madara and just no-sells the illusion, which is pretty cool. The fact that Madara just has the sword, I mean, he's just standing there like, It's a little confusing how when he exited the sword didn't, cut him. Because clearly it shows the sword going upward and not through his body, but that's more of a nitpick if anything. It does lead to more of a worry if anything, because they do skip forms from what I've heard from Bleach fans, which is not good. It's fine for characters like these who really need to focus on couple forms. It does make me a bit worried for Vegeta versus Thor when that comes out. It's going to be which forms they're going to skip, but that's a different topic. One thing that this fight does really well is the voice acting. Madara sounds really good, however, Aizen is a star show in my opinion. He gets across his hate for humans very well. He looks down on them. He sells so many lines. Madara does get my favorite line in the fight though, but not my favorite fight of the season. We'll get to it. I do like how they do the black hole in the box. I love when he busts out the Susanoo looking things. After Madara breaks out the box, you only see its shadow of the Nine-Tails Beast. It is such an effective way of showing just how powerful Madara is about to get. And they're like, you know what? Let's top that. Let's make him just bring a meteor with no emphasis. You might think, oh wait, this is bad. You will be wrong, because the reason why it works so well is that he does this so casually, it doesn't even matter. It is such a good way of establishing his power. And then we get to the slightly confusing part of Madara either absorbing or just breaking Aizen's shield. I like to believe he broke it, but interpretations. And then in a raw display of power from Aizen himself, he just cuts the meteor in half. I kind of wish they did something like, I don't know, it's like a 60-second fight, I don't know. Anyways, where Madara just brings a bigger meteor on him. But that's just wishful thinking. But Madara, not to be outdone, just summons more tinier meteors. And the sound design gets cranked to a 12, and we get the best things ever. And I absolutely love the third and final Aizen transformation. It works so effectively because he's just menacingly standing there. However, I'm going to say this right now, I absolutely hate Bleach designs. They just don't fit with me. Maybe it's just me, but I will concur. The perfect Susanoo looks good. Like, all of the good hand-drawn bits were saved for that. Which then we do get to the one issue of the fight that's really big. Aizen summon up his dragons. Frame rate pretty much kills it. But it's only this specific part because it does pick back up. But then at least my favorite part of the whole fight, the Limbo clones versus the dragon. They're going back and forth, and I absolutely love the ending bit where Madara just takes one of the truth balls and just rams it right into one of the dragons. But then we get the best part of the whole fight, the Madara speech.
I love it. The thrill of battle, the pounding of my heart, the taste of my own blood. I love it!
But then this leads to another great part, the final bit. The part where they both are maniacally laughing at each other, and we get this amazing hand-drawn bit. And then we finally get the first fake-out death, which is Aizen falling. It's not really much of a fake-out because they kind of expect it. However, then Aizen comes out of nowhere, drops one of the single menacing lines. Then we get a very haunting Madara death cry. If it ended right there, Aizen would have won. However, if I could have changed one thing, I would have made the music stop after that. But that's not even a nitpick because it actually does help out a little bit. Because after Madara just breaks out, because earlier was TC used the Genjutsu, which put Aizen under his hypnosis, and then we finally got this cool kill. Little orb, turning it into a staff and impaling Aizen by the mouth, and then he expands it and just annihilates his head. And then I love how it essentially is like, you think it's gonna end. Essentially a fake out for a fake out. Think Aizen is gonna come out of nowhere and just cut him up, but he just dies. Very long-winded explanation, but it's a really good death in my opinion. I do think the post-analysis would have worked a lot better if they went a little bit more in depth, but it's good enough. They do essentially just equalize the stats and just say Madara just haxes him, which is good. But I do kind of wish they brought up why they don't use Universal Aizen. Mostly just to help their argument out. Not to say it's bad, but it was just something that would have been nice. Also, I don't know how I didn't mention this. Hollow Dreams is a really good track. It's like one of the best of the whole show, which is a very tough choice. But the lyrics are good, it's hype, it's amazing. However, moving to the next episode, which is conveniently the episode after this. Most of the next part is going to be very short, but Saitama vs. Popeye is a really good episode. I'm not going to try to regurgitate because I said all of this in my podcast that I started. If you want a little bit more of an in-depth analysis, go there. But it's essentially TLDR. Analysis of some of the best of the season. The hand-drawn stuff were really good. Love how the fight starts. Absolutely love the ending bit. I love the animation changes. I love the track. I love everything about this fight. It's a near perfect fight. one of the best season finales we've gotten, but I will say, Cursed Popeye kind of does bring it down a bit. Like, I get a bunch of ironic value from it. I know a lot of people don't like it, which I can see why. But I do think the final bit really carries it to here. In the Binza comedy, I love. I do like them disproving why Saitama isn't a gag character. So yeah, moving on. Okay, so finally, we got the top 2. These 2 I was torn of choosing, but I think I might have picked the right choice. For the number 2 spot, we have Dio versus Alucard. Now, the analysis, Dio's analysis is really good. However, Alucard's is one of the best in the show. Like, hands down, is one of the best in the show. They both have a good flow between things. It goes from Dio's part 1 abilities, how he lost them, and how he gained his part 3 abilities. I like how Alucard goes from the explanation of his abilities to why he seals them into how he got them. It's a really cool flow of things. However, the fight, though, is amazing. It's a pretty genius setup, and it just writes itself. Dio is a vampire, and Alucard is a vampire hunter. Makes sense. And I will get this out of the way. Alucard's performance is a little off at times. Nothing like bad like Shao Kahn, but it's a tiny bit off sometimes. Like, another retake would have been good. However, Dio, on the other hand, he gets one of the best performances in the whole season. But let's get into the actual fight. Really weird compliment, but I love the way Dio moves. Yes, I know it's using heritage sprites, which are really good. The way how he's just arching his back, he's just moving and shit. He moves very uniquely from other fighters. I like how Alucard on the opposite end is not even moving at all. He's literally just letting himself get hit and do the regeneration for him, which would ultimately fuck him in the ass later. This is something a lot different. It plays with the environment. Dio going to the knife store to get his knife supply when he time swap is really cool. Sound design when he time swap is magnificent. But we can't talk about character without Alucard. He is developed as this eldritch abomination, which I love. Like, you can get this sense that he is scaring the ever-living shit out of Dio. Like, when he goes level 1, Dio almost breaks character, which is fucking hilarious.
Oh, so very weak, dog. You thought you'd triumph, but it was I. Dio?
I do like how they integrated the dog food line. It makes sense and it fits in context. But with Dio also being very confident, kind of throws a roller at him, which Dio's performance actually does a really good muda, and it's really sold well. Also, some little fun fact, Alucard never hits the world at all. It's just a little fun little fact. After he gets smashed with the roller, the world gets this really cute little moment of him like, what the fuck? Before he gets tsunamied by an ocean of blood. And then after it, and then we get this cool moment of Dio and the world is fighting off a bunch of zombies from Alucard. And it is such a good moment, because then we finally see him bloodied and batter up. And speaking of getting tsunamied, this fight does a really good job on conveying just how much damage they're taking with just their clothes alone. Like, Alucard loses his hat, and Dio loses his jacket. And for most of the fight, Alucard is just ragdolling Dio around. I like that. And Dio is just genuinely scared at this point. He even asks, "What are you?" And we get one of the best lines of the whole show.
What the hell are you?
A real fucking vampire.
Combined with the reverb that they did, it is such a good line. And a hand-drawn Alucard looks schmexy. Oh yeah, and speaking of getting feared, the track. Oh my god, it's so good. This is a underrated pick in my opinion. Fight perfectly fits everything. First starts off with a very jazz-like theme, but as it continues, it gets more and more sinister. But once Dio figures out a way to get past Alucard, it is very triumphant yet still sinister. It's such a good track. I don't know why everyone's sleeping on this track. But back to the fight, the next part is something straight out of JoJo, which I would love. They fight on the side of Big Ben with the hourglass hands. This does have my one tiny issue of a 2D model is moving with a giant 3D one. It looks odd. And Alucard's face occasionally looks really bad, but it's very far away so you can barely see it. I also do like how in the fight, Alucard finally gets a hold of Dio and blasts him with as much bullets as he can. He uses his ability to freeze shit and freeze Alucard's arms off and just grows pack of new arms. He used the world shout once and they made that one time count.
I want to rule the world!
And yes, I know it slows down frame rate wise, but it's so good. And the sound effect immediately hour is so good. And in the, like I said earlier, with the track, it gets a lot more triumphant. Like Dio finally figured out what this guy is. We get this moment of him taking back advantage. Him essentially going up to Alucard and be like, bow to your new god. And then Alucard, one last attempt to frighten him, goes to Burn of Hermes. And then Quagmire on him, but then Dio figures it out with no fear and just teleports right behind him. He does the pose, he delivers a stand rush, and delivers the final blow to his head. Hey, wait a second. Yeah, now that also has my one issue. The stand rush feels a little weak. Like, it doesn't feel like he's putting all into his punch. But that final hit definitely had that. And speaking of impact, the ride. It is so good. Like, it gives the guy who did the Giorno English version Morai a run for his money. It's that good. Now, after that, I do like the arguments they made for Dio. However, I do slightly disagree with them saying that Dio can just mind hack Alucard. But I'm not here to debate because that's not my medium. So, moving on, we finally got the cream of the crop. An episode that might have honestly entered my top 5 all time. So, let's see what it is. Now, after 3 months and me constantly teasing, I can finally talk about Reverse Flash versus Goku Black. I need to set the stage real quick. Even though they were borderline masterpieces, they still had a few issues. Like Godzilla vs. Gamera didn't age the best. All Might vs. Micah had a slightly weak death. And Afro vs. Jack had a very tiny continuity error, but nothing too major. This fight, I have 0 things to criticize. Not a bad line read, not a slightly off model. This is a fight where everything is cranked to 12. There is nothing I can criticize about this fight. But there's a lot I can praise, so let's do that. Before I do, I need to get the elephant out of the room. Yes, I know Goku Black's analysis is bad, but it was only in the early portion, and after it gets really good. Reverse Flash analysis is also really good. It's either him, Alucard, or Saitama. It's one of the 3 I can't pick, but it's probably one of them. However, the fight. However, let's start at the very beginning of the fight. They started off with the "It was me" Barry line, and that is the best thing they could have gone with. And right at the start, you might hear a certain someone as Reverse Flash. That's right.
It was me, Barry.
They got the original "It was me" Barry guy. He gives one of the best Thawne performances I've ever heard. He literally breathes Reverse Flash, and it is perfect. And the other guy, as Goku Black, is also really, really good. They both sell their cocky attitude, but Goku Black gets across his arrogance very well. And the reason why they're fighting is also pretty believable. I just like to believe that Reverse Flash just woke up and chose violence, which is pretty good. I will say the start's a little weak. I'd say it's bad, it's just not as good as the rest. Because this little part right here where Goku Black is just missing all of his shots when he's standing still. Not very good. Characterizing Reverse Flash is one of this episode's greatest strengths. And I love just choreography-wise, it's amazing. That's when Goku Black's first real advantage is pressed. His first move he hits Reverse Flash with is a move that sends him through the earth to the moon and back around. And it sounds amazing. Meanwhile, Reverse Flash only hit him through a couple of buildings. This is another thing this episode does really well. Showing off the pure power of Goku Black and the immeasurable speed of Reverse Flash. And thank you to the Goku Black guy. He gave us one of the best Kamehameha shouts we've ever gotten. Like a planet kaboom sounding one. It's not the only thing that's good. Dialogue is pitch perfect. If they messed up one line, it probably would have not been as good. They got every single line off perfectly. There's not a single bad line read. And something I like about this episode is the facial animation. It is also near perfect. There is not a single bad or overly detailed face, like Steven vs. Star or Ryuko vs. Shadow. And I haven't even gotten into the time travel shenanigans. That's on the level we're on. After Reverse Slash goes into the time realm, every time when Reverse Slash goes into it, Goku Black also falls because he can't go into it himself. I absolutely adore the stuff they do in it. Like, Goku Black just comes out of nowhere and just slices one Reverse Slash apart, while earlier, Thawne did the same thing to Zamasu. After that, it gets crazy. Zamasu is sending out his other clones to hunt down Thawne. Then they just start going back in time and killing each other, doing nothing. And the reference from Quicksilver versus Flash from earlier is put in here because Reverse Slash put that statue up, so they went back in time to kill that Thawne. And then this sets up for the climax. Oh boy, we will get to that. I love this part where Zamasu is like, what's a mortal to a god? And Thawne says, what's a god to a paradox? And then we get potentially one of the best line reads I've ever gotten in a death battle. No hyperbole, just listen.
How truly foolish. Sorry, was that important?
It is such an in-character moment. I absolutely love it. Oh yeah, and this isn't over. You know how the deaths on all of these, they were relatively tame, not that bad? Well, when I first saw this episode, I audibly said, holy shit. And I have never said that in an episode in a very long time. So without meandering, I'm gonna show you why.
How fun.
This death might give Hulk vs. Doomsday a run for its money. It might honestly surpass it in all honesty. Because that was only building level. In here, the sound design when Goku Black's getting dragged across the earth is so gut-wrenching. You see his corpse just hanging on Reverse Slash's hand. And Thawne's wind-up right here has more impact than a lot of hits in Death Battle. And then he chucks it at the supernova and detonates the thing. And the supernova has so much impact. But the reason why it has so much is because it's a byproduct of it. And this fight really made me feel something. This is not just a top 5 fight. This might be a top 3. I'm not joking. It is reaching that level, which haven't had a long time. And last thing, Reverse Rose is one of the best tracks we've gotten. Not even joking. It is a top 3 track ever in Death Battle. It's like Mighty, Reverse Rose, and then Infection Perfection. Wings of Iron is an honorable mention. However, gonna wrap these up quickly. If you want to take one thing away from this video, Season 8 was great. One of the best seasons we've had in a long while. Didn't have any Marvel vs. DC. We had 2 Marvel vs. DCs, and like a handful of Marvel and other DC matchups. But only one was like very unneeded. And it just gave us a lot of franchises we wanted, matchups we wanted, and it gave us an episode that we all liked. So, to end things off, Merry Christmas, or Hanukkah, or any holiday that's on December 25th. Spend time with your family, and well, hope you had a good day, and see you later.
This is me, Neo_. I'm the boss of Lil Galil. Kool-Aid Man versus Macho Man, top 1 episode. Can't beat it. Best episode, top 1 in the series ever. In the whole history, nothing can top this, and it will never be topped. Best episode. Subscribe to Flashbacks.